And hello to everybody, Rover, Ford, whatever, both people, every single kind of subscriber that I've managed to pick up, especially in the last few months. There seems to have been a bit of a boom, and I'm really thankful for the support as always. And as promised, or as I've mentioned continuously for the last 6 months, a third car was always on the cards. As a YouTuber, I think it's important to have a little bit more of a diverse content, even though I cannot financially or sustainably have more than 3 cars, at least for long periods of time. So it would be a case of only 3 cars on this channel at any one stage. The Focus and Beatrix are the main keepers, and the third car may be an alternating car. I've got a feeling though, with the car that I have purchased a couple of weeks ago, I've had the car 2 weeks now, but I've only really started looking at the car in the last few days, just before this video goes out. And I couldn't turn this car down. This car came up at a time where, really honestly, I said I couldn't afford anything after having the respray done on the Mark 1. But this car came about and I've had to beg, borrow and steal, because opportunities like this don't really come around, and I tend to see it as an opportunity considering the car's overall condition, but it needs a few little bits and pieces. Absolutely perfect for my channel, and I am not going to waste any more time. Let's see what my new car is. Let's get my hat on and go outside. And here she is, wrapped up under the car cover. You may have an idea of what this could be straight away. You may not. Some of you may have already guessed. Only about 6 people know, 2 of which actually guessed. That's how damn predictable I can be sometimes. But to everybody else, I've kept this absolutely stum. Apart from one mistake I made 2 weeks ago at 6 o'clock, there was a video that went out. It was the wrong video. The correct title, wrong video, and it was the reveal of this car. In not this video, obviously, because this has been recorded 2 days ago, guys, just 2 days ago. There was another video I did on this, looking at the brochure of this particular car, and thankfully, those people have remained quiet. I thank you. I think about 20 people must have seen that and sussed exactly what car I bought. I'm sorry I spoilt it for you, but I'm really pleased that you haven't spoilt it for everybody else. And I don't know if you have any picture of what this car could be. I don't take this lightly in purchasing this car. It does need a little bit of TLC here, but for what I paid for it, from someone who has sold a few collector's cars down the years with his own car collection. Yeah, so anyway, I'm going to get on and reveal the car. This is a car that will stay with me for the next 12 months. And then this car will be offered to anybody who wants to buy it from me. I will improve it, look after it. That's the plan. It's not staying with me. It's something to enjoy and then move on to a nice home. And one of you guys could have this car if you want to pay me the price. It won't be much, trust me. Right, let's get on with it. 3, 2, 1. Of course, a Fiesta Mark III on an F-Reg. An F-Reg Fiesta, 1989, in diamond white, 2-tone grey. Ford Fiesta Mark III, 1.4 CVH gear. How about that? I bet you weren't expecting that. Some of you were. I have wanted one of these for quite a while, and if you've watched some of my latest videos, particularly the one at the Festival of the Unexceptional, by that video I had already agreed a deal for this, so I was naturally infused by the fact that I saw so many of them, and all of them in absolute stonking condition. This, I am technically the 5th owner, but really honestly, 2 of them owners barely had the car for a few months from what I can recall. One of them was the family of the original lady owner from new. The same lady owned this car from 1989 to 2020. She passed away sadly in 2020, but the car had been in the garage since 2009. I can only assume she gave up her driving license, and it was dry stored. And this car is as rust free as any Mark Fiesta will get. There's a tiny bit of scabbiness on the back arches, but there is nothing catastrophic, nothing that's going to cause a massive expense. And I do say that lightly with cars this age, because they do tend to throw tons of surprises. Let's just get this off. I'm gonna have to clean that now. Oh yes, she does have a few bits of patina here and there, but she is a 1.4 gear, and I'm afraid it's a current theme on my channel, and I find this rather interesting considering how rare this car actually is. And it's in here. Oh yes, it is the Ford CTX CVT transmission. Exactly the gearbox that Beatrix is fitted with, just slightly tweaked later on in life with electronics. This is the original gearbox. It has no electronics. It is purely mechanical. I could not wait to buy this car when it came up. It came up at precisely the right time. I was looking at a manual. The truth is, actually, my channel goes the way of automatics. Both my other cars are automatics through one reason or the other. This time, I have deliberately chosen this because of this gearbox, and I really do believe in CVTs. This gearbox isn't particularly known for its reputation of reliability, but I actually want to prove people wrong again, because I think I've done that with Beatrix. There's nothing wrong with them gearboxes, and this is the same. I can't wait. Aside from that, it is a gear, which is why the automatic versions were only ever fitted with the 1.4 CVH engine underneath the bonnet. So it's not the high compression swirl Valencia engine, it is the CVH engine, the lean burn version of that engine. And we have a fantastically looking original interior with the usual baggy seats as usual. And yeah, we've got a window regulator that I think the owner says it snapped. I've got a feeling it may not have snapped, but the window's dropping, it won't go back up. It will come down with the switch, but it won't go back up again, hence the cardboard. So just so you know, we've got a usual wear and tear, but the bottoms of the doors are just ridiculously clean, just needs a scrub up. And this is your sill. Absolutely ridiculous. I've got these lovely gear alloys that they wore originally. We've got a bit of scabby rust as usual, so this may have gone through. I might have to have this welded properly, but it's possible I could get away with that, particularly with some neat fiberglass. It depends whether there's structural holes. It's not particularly structural, that, but we've come round to the back and we've got the usual back end of the car with these wrap round rear lights, which was so modern. These looked so modern compared to Mark IIs. I really do think that this was the first car that Ford designed that actually took them forwards to the 90s, properly forwards to the 90s. Quite conventional underneath. These early Fiestas, and this is why I went for this car. These early Fiestas, carburettor, distributor, no cat. There's nothing to them. There's no electrics, there's no ECU. They are so far different than the late 3.5 Fiestas that ran out around 1996-97 to coincide with the Mark IV production, which again used the same platform and the same body shell. They didn't really change much, but they did tweak a lot under the bonnet. Those cars were very different with fuel injection, etc. It's just, there's no rust on the bottom of the valance whatsoever. I mean, underneath, it's just surface rust. Bottom of the under tray for the spare wheel, because obviously the spare wheel lives underneath, not in the boot. It wears its original rates registration plates with all the patina to go with it. I like that. You keep it like that. I'm a bit annoyed about that sticker. Someone's blooming ripped that off in the past. We've got some dodgy paint going on here. I suspect because it's white. White is a very easy colour to disguise problems, which is why I took a risk with this car. I bought this car blind off the internet. We're not completely blind. You are going to meet the last owner of this car because he has an amazing collection of Fords, particularly Fords. That's his thing. But my God, I'm so glad it's sunny today. You can see how good this car is. It's so straight, it's untrue. You know, some of the strips have gone a bit funny where they've gone a bit discoloured. Usual. We've got a bit of scabby rust here, but there's absolutely nothing. A bit of scab at the bottom, but there's nothing. Look at the sill. There's nothing underneath. And obviously we've got no fuel pump in the boot. It's a mechanical pump because it's a carburettor. There's nothing to go wrong. We've got aging tyres. All the tyres are going to need replacing because they're about 15 years old. You know, there's no rot at the bottom of the sill, that sort of thing, or the wings. There's just nothing. Absolutely nothing. And it's got a sunroof. The first car I've owned with a sunroof. If my camera will focus in on the sunroof. Which opens. That sunroof does not leak, by the way. There was a previous leak. And we've had a bit of dodgy filling work around here. I can tell you that most of this is metal. I put a magnet across this. But we have had some sort of filling work done here, as we can possibly see just here. That's the thing with white. But even areas like this where they tend to rot out around the wiper spindles, they're nothing. It's got all the original glass. It's all been etched. That one, I can't see the number on that one. This one, yeah, it's just the original etching on the windows. They all match, by the way. Absolutely stonking. And an F-Reg, this, by the way, guys, as far as I'm aware, must be within the sort of earliest top 10 that exist, Mark III's. This is one of the earliest surviving Mark III's by a long distance. It was registered on the 16th of May. That is precisely just over a month when they were launched on the 15th of April 1989. That makes this very early, top 10. Top 10 100%. I have no doubt that it is the earliest CTX because as far as I'm concerned there are only 55 Mark III Fiestas in total that exist with this gearbox. 55, that's it. That is it. That is sawned and that is on the road. Even less so on the road. This is technically sawned at the moment and it has been for a while. Yeah, so it is probably the earliest Mark III CTX. I know it is, to be honest, based on logic. But it's brilliant. You had all sorts of things like central locking. The central locking works absolutely fine on all the doors. The electronic tailgate release works perfectly fine. There's no rot in the boot. You know, you come in here and you smell the 1980s. It's just dirty in places, a bit of a scrub up the top, but there's no evidence of mould or leaking whatsoever. You know, you just got the material that I'm going to sort this out because it is a thing where the material comes away from the foam. A trim shop will do it after they've got the usual scratches because they all come with scratches. The plastic is, I could get my nail and make a nice new scratch in that. It's dreadful, but nothing. And the best one is here, down here. There's just nothing. I mean, it's just the lip that's gone on this. And it's just separated into two pieces. It has been treated before, but it's starting to go. I need to have a look at that more seriously. But it's just usual. I mean, that can be cleaned up. This sill is as good as the other side. Now, before we go inside, I'm just going to flip this up. This is a bit stiff. Everything's stiff on this car. Lack of use. I thought I was going to break that. It's really flimsy. I can't remember where it is. There we go. Oh. Now, I've got to point out one thing for a start. I conked my head out on this the first time I opened the bonnet. Rob, the previous owner, did warn me about the missing grommet. We're missing a grommet. It's actually not there. I know it's the same grommet that they fit to every single Ford for the bonnet stay. It's missing, and that bonnet prop just jumped and fell down there, and a bit of my head has come off on that, presumably. Whew, that was nasty. You did warn me, Rob. I will say that. You did warn me. We have got a very nice engine bay. It's the 1.4 75 brake horsepower CVH. It's a good engine. they were good engines back in the day. They weren't brilliant, a bit coarse because of the way that the cylinder head is designed with those springs and valves sitting at an angle. Everything is a bit more stiffer, hence why I think the vibration and coarseness, the noise, vibration and harshness wasn't brilliant. But as they say, the constant vibration and harshness engine, pretty much. But it's all quite dry down here. There's a bit of a leak from the rocker cover. We're going to sort that out. It's kind of leaking from down there. The timing belt needs to be done because, like the tyres, 15 years at least since that was last serviced, because the original owner had this car serviced until 2009 when she put it in the garage and presumably gave up her driving license or gave up driving through presumably ill health or just couldn't drive no more. And yeah, that was the last time really the car would have been serviced. But apparently, according to the family, it was serviced on the button every single year. We've got genuine Ford HT leads. I don't want to get rid of these. I was going to buy some replacements, but these are very high quality, including the King lead, which goes to the coil just mounted over there because it is a distributor ignition. I'm going to be teaching you all the things to do with distributors, and we have underneath the airbox a Weber 2830 carburettor. And this isn't the Ford variable Venturi carburettor. They were crap back in the day. They were really bad. It's not that. So we're going to do a lot of tuning. This car definitely needs a tune up. I'll just show you that in a bit. But look how clean it is. I mean, there was some advisories on the last MOT for some scabbiness or rust on the corrosion on the bottom cross member, but there's just nothing on the other side. It just needs treating. It's not like terminal rust. I will get on top of that even the battery tray, which tend to rot out, they don't look fine as well. But oh, for sake, why oh why does every car I buy come with iron battery? They're absolute junk. Honest to God, why do people buy this? Well, actually, there is a reason why someone's bought this battery. It's because every single Ford, generally in the 80s, are a bit weird with the battery connections. They've got these stupid square connectors. I don't know why someone at Ford thought, do you know what, batteries have got these circular connectors, but you know what, let's just make our cars really weird and stupid, because I think putting square connectors would make our cars look a bit different to everybody else's, you know, thinking outside the box. Why the hell was that a good idea? That is stupid. This car has still got its original connectors. You can get, believe it or not, line batteries with square connectors. I cannot believe that from a Euro Car Parts budget special battery, that they actually make a model with square terminal connectors. This is an 085 battery, I believe, a Lion 085 if you want to know. It's going to go, and I'm going to do a conversion on these. We're going to convert them to normal connectors and get a proper Yuasa battery in charge of things. It will be a small 063, but it will be very, very powerful, considering apart from the ignition amplifier on the distributor that replaces essentially almost the points in some respects, that is rather few electronic components of this car. I just remembered I left my magnet. I found a couple of random screws in this car recently, the other day, when I was having a look round. And also we have an dealer fitted alarm. It is dealer fitted, by the way, this one, completely original to the car, and yeah, it's been cut off like in the typical 1980s fashion. I have no idea why it's been cut off, but hey, but we have a key. I've got a key for that, so I'll have a look to see if it works. But presumably the reason it's been cut off is because it kind of goes off all the time. This is the thing with these alarms. When they're great when they work, but they malfunction. And most 80s cars have got this kind of issue, really. But it is just incredibly dry. We're talking about 75 brake horsepower from the lean burn version of the 1.4 CVH to replace the 1.3 CVH, the original CVH. This has a slightly different cylinder head, because Ford was getting kind of conscious about emissions like a lot of other manufacturers. And back in the day, particularly in the mid-80s, catalytic converters were around in the mid-80s in some markets. The UK was slow. Europe was actually slow with cats. We didn't have to have them fitted to about 91, 92 Euro 1 regulations, and most Ford Fiesta Mark IIIs from 91 come with at least what they call central fuel injection, which is basically single point fuel injection. It's one injector on the throttle body where the carb sits, an ECU, some sensors, some crankshaft position sensors, and a few other sensors like throttle position sensors, and an ECU, an EEC4 ECU. So the 91 cars, there was a bit of a changeover from this setup, which is why I wanted an early one. I think the early ones just appeal to my old school back to basics sense. There's just nothing to go wrong. I've got to say the wiring is a bit thin. Jesus Christ. So that's why I wanted this car essentially. Yeah, this engine, I will go into detail more or less, but Ford basically, like a lot of manufacturers, the Rover K series is another example of a lean burn engine where manufacturers are thinking, well, we can actually get our cars to perform much more efficiently by reducing the amount of fuel. With this particular engine, they tweaked the cylinder head quite a bit. There is a massive difference between this and the earlier 1.1, 1.3 CVH. But this is known as the 1.4 lean burn CVH. Remarkably, for all the Mark 1 Focus subscribers, this engine in North America markets was known as the split port 2 litre engine. They actually fitted it to the Mark 1 Focus up to 2004, the end of Mark 1 production, to the Mark 1s in the North American market. I think about 108 brake horsepower, split port injection. Split port 2000 is what they were referred to as. 108 brake horsepower from a 2 litre engine. When you compare that with a 130 horsepower 2 litre double overhead cam Zetec engine, yeah, this is very, very old school, and it was definitely kicked out of touch by both the Sigma and the Zetec engine. But 1992 was even much more of a change, because the Zetec engine came out, known as the Zeta, originally at the time, although that was a bit of a copyright issue with the Italians, so they changed it to Zetec. That changed the Fiesta for quite a while. The only Fiesta you could get with fuel injection in 1989 at the launch of these cars was the XR2i with EFI, with multi-point fuel injection on the 1.6 CVH. That was a very healthy engine indeed, but I wanted something a bit more easy to insure. Anyway, let's take a look inside. Oh, get in it. This is a nice place to be. Oh boy, yes. Even the steering wheel is in good condition. There's no scrapes, there's no ring finger scrapes along the rim. It's just fantastic, just basic vinyl. Usual no power steering, obviously on the early ones, which is again another plus point. I don't mind having no power steering. Owning a Rover P6 was like driving a ship or a tank most of the time, so this will be absolutely fine. And obviously down here we've got just a simple handbrake. This handbrake works a treat. There's been some work done on this car, and I think this handbrake has been adjusted properly. Although the adjustment is underneath the car, I do want to make sure that the actual back wheels do lock. I mean, it literally just locks with like one click. That's quite tight. So I'm going to check that the wheels do actually lock. Otherwise, someone's just cheated and done the usual tightening the handbrake, but not actually tightening the brake drums. But we've got this lovely gear shifter, which I didn't realise because I was struggling to get it out of park when I took it off the delivery truck. And I realised you have to push it down. You have to push it down to change gear. But we've got all the usual, but we've got a low range. So no sport mode, no electronic stuff, just mechanical, kick down linkage, that sort of thing. Low range, just a bit more engine braking. Got a nice cubby hole down here. We can't touch that switch. As I've said before, I've got to put that window back up for security. But it does work. All these switches work. The electronic tailgate release does work. Unbelievable. And obviously this window does work, but it's a bit reluctant to come back up. I think the runners are really stuck on this window. I put it down the other day, it wouldn't go back up. I had to hold my finger on the switch until it decided to go back up. So yes, and we've got these weird sensor things here. This is part of the alarm system, which is now cut off. But I think that's really a nice little thing to just keep on the car. At the end of the day, it's there. It's been on the car since new, along with that light. And that's why I think this was a dealer-fitted option, because it just looks so integral. These would be normally blanking plates. One of them would be for a heated screen, which we don't have on this model. It was an option. You couldn't get ABS. That was an option. Mechanical belt-driven ABS, mechanical ABS before electronic motors. That was an option, but it never got took up by the owner. But we have the original radio, which works absolutely perfectly. I'll just turn the ignition off. But it works absolutely fine. I just need to ask the previous owner for the code. Hopefully he's got the code or can tell me, because I'm going to take the battery off at some point. Got a little ashtray there, but for sort of coins or whatever. Quite dusty in there. This cigarette lighter, it just doesn't look as if it's been used at all. We've got the rear demister, rear fog light, of course. We've got these fan switches. I'm going to show you the fan in a second, because it's absolutely hilarious. We've got some vents up here, which are quite toddly. They're quite nice, and we've just got an on and off. But I always have them on, because why wouldn't you? We've got this clock, which is, it's kind of lost one of the digits. You can't see from here because of the light, but one of the digits on number 1, when it's on number 1 from 12 o'clock to 1900 hours, yeah, basically that's what the problem is. And obviously we have got some damage. We've got some scratching. There's been some old cigarette marks. Honestly, why would you smoke in this car? It's really annoying, that is. I might look to see if I can get a second-hand door card. I've got to be honest, Fords of this age, getting trim is difficult, and it's kind of just make do and mend. I love these soft headrests, and these seats are comfortable. They're not supportive. There's no bolsters. There's not really any bolsters. There's a shape to them, but there's not really any bolsters in them. But I don't really mind that. They do need a bit of a clean here and there, but that's absolutely fine. The carpets look absolutely amazing. We'll get the carpets up and have a look underneath at some point. But over here, we have the thing that is fitted to early Fiestas. Yes, we have the joystick, and it works perfectly. Wow, this is just blanked off on later models, but I've got a joystick because I've got an F-Reg. Choke in a place where you wouldn't normally think. It won't move very far because the choke is permanently on. I think it needs a new choke cable, because there's something wrong with the end of it in that on the engine bay side, and the tuning's all off the place. I mean, to be fair, it runs fine, but it's on the choke all the time. So, yeah, it starts quite easily because of that. But over here, we've got, obviously, a rev counter. I don't think I'd run to rev it anywhere near that, thank you. Obviously, full beam, direction indicators, oil, pressure light, battery, fuel, temperature, handbrake, and parking brake. So you've got some warning lights there. And the car has only done 49,557 miles. That's nothing, which is possibly why the gearbox still works, as some people are possibly thinking. But just sort of down here, we've got another cubby hole down here. Just got nice 2 pedals, plenty of foot room really for my left foot, because kind of this was the day where we didn't really have the back end of a center console. It was just sort of not really there. This was before the days of integral consoles, so kind of this piece doesn't meet with this piece, but later on in life, dashboards will become a bit more uniform, exactly what we're used to in sort of later cars. Tell you what, the glove compartment is really generous. There's no cracking in the dashboard. They're not known for cracking, but, you know, got a courtesy light up here, and this does work. Flipping it. And you can remove the glass. And on a day like today, I'm getting sweltered already. Nothing wrong with the headline. I mean, to be fair, you know, there's no massive material on these. They're very hard wearing, very cheap. And I love the big door mirrors you get on these Fiestas. I just think the small ones, the 3.5s, are just not good. And they are adjustable, bit stiff as usual, but, you know, just not a lot of adjustment. But there we go. Just everything's a bit stiff with this car. But really, really nice. And I'll just start it up for you. I had to go and get my keys now. With the keys, I've got a few spares, so I'm going to separate all this. But basically what we have is 2 alarm boxes, one main, one spare. But this one of them's got a battery in it. I think it's this one. And you still get a flashing LED. There you go. It's got a battery in there. And it's supposed to turn off the alarm system, but it's been cut off. But I think it's a really nice feature to keep on the car. And as usual, we have a torch key. It's not working though. The torch bit is actually broken, but I think I can get another one. But if I just start it up, and I'm literally just going to start it now and see what. That's how easy it is to start. Just give it a bit of a kick. That is the sound of a CVH. Oh boy, and I can smell the fuel straight away. Unbelievable, that sounds really smooth. It is going to have an oil change. It will have everything done with that timing belt. And the CVT, it's a bit more like a whirry washing machine in this example, but that's how they're supposed to sound. Absolutely cracking. Let's take it backwards, shall we? Just shut the door and engage reverse. And the whirriness from that gearbox, that is exactly the way they all sound. Woo! That's kind of scary space age sound. It's nice smooth engagement. Just moved it back into its original parking spot. I'm going to have to reposition it because the work will start immediately. Now, I don't think it might have been apparent on camera. The choke is on. The engine is running very fast, as you can probably tell. 1100 RPM, that's fast idle. Realistically, we're talking quite a fast idle here. Okay, so it all needs a bit of a good tune-up. And I'm aware about the CVH's flaws, i.e. 50,000 miles, we're looking, yeah, we're getting towards like 10-20,000 miles down the line, maybe of camshaft wear, but I suspect that is only down to oil blockages. We're going to have a look at a few things. I might take the sump off. There might be a few things that I'll do with a thorough oil change. I want to make sure that everything is good on this car, and it's going to be very similar to the procedure I did on Beatrix, apart from the fact that this hopefully doesn't need a head gasket changing. I'd hope not. But there is just a slight whiff of a bit of blue smoke at the back. Just a tiny fraction in that exhaust. But it did calm down. It started smoking just now. And just before I actually parked it up here, it actually had died down. That's probably a good sign, actually. So I definitely think some Lucas oil stabilizer just to seal around them piston rings might be a good idea. I'm kind of aware Ford engines of this age tend to, you know, blow a little bit of oil out, but we'll see how it goes getting on. You know, you've got to accept these things. There's a few things with 80s Fords that I am prepared for, and that is burning oil and rust. Well, this car has got a few scabs that I've pointed out. Not much at all, really. We've got just stupid stuff. The sticker, dodgy regulator. It is going to need timing belt oil. The gearbox fluid is going to be changed. Strangely enough, though, it's the fluid that is actually specified for this CVT is actually not specialist CVT fluid. It's actually Ford stuff, and there's only 3.5 litres. Beatrix, the gearbox, the CVT, which is essentially the same gearbox in Beatrix, takes 5 litres on a drain and refill. That's very strange. Maybe that explains why so many of them have failed. Maybe there's a lack of fluid in these gearboxes. Maybe it's a design flaw. Ford never got to the bottom of it. But apart from that, I mean, the usual areas. You're going to ask me about the filler cap. There's nothing. There's nothing on the underside. I'll show you the underside. Look, you can see the plastic filler neck. Why did Ford stop using plastic filler necks? Why do they go to steel, which are more expensive and they rot? Why? Plastic's brilliant. Ah, superb. I'm starting to like this car. It's got the original exhaust. It's so original, this car. I've got to be careful about not changing too many things. Got a missing aerial. Some reason, yeah, we've got a missing aerial. Things like that. So there's things to be consciously aware about. And just to do as full a job as properly as I can. Now, I'm hoping to get this car ready for September the 23rd. September the 23rd, this car might be going to the Motorist in Leeds. There is a Ford show at the Motorist at Leeds on that day. I may take the Mark 1 Focus. It will be ready. This car may be ready. I'd like to take this, but I've got to trust it first. We've got to do a few things before we can do that. We've got to change the timing belt, and the timing belt on a CVH apparently is a piece of, you know. So that's to come as well. Major oil, you know, just servicing, basic servicing. Dynex, we have a system. I have a system. You know the way I work. Those of you who've watched me working on Beatrix will know my system. And we got a few. There's a broken piece of trim, like something like that. You know, this is broken. Someone's crushed that trimming. No, don't worry, they're cheap enough anyway. It's just stupid things. You know, stuff like this. You just gotta get used to. That door card isn't bad, just a bit annoying with the cigarette burns. The seats are actually not as baggy as what I first thought. They're actually not bad, and not at all. It's not mileage related, it's age related. Unfortunately, they all suffer from the same problem. So I'm going to leave that here. Episode 1, day 1. So, meet Project Ruby. Ruby named after the R. It might be a bit obvious if I called it Project Diamond. Project Ruby. And she's probably going to be the most well-known Mark III Fiesta-ish by the time I finish with her. Take care, guys.